how to build an ADU. Is there a benefit to building an ADU? Can you build it in your home? Do you convert your garage? Do you add to your house? Do you build it on top of your house, behind your house? Or you might say, hey, can I make my investment property generate even more income with an ADU or a JADU, an accessory dwelling unit? Two awesome subject matter experts are gonna tell you everything you need to know, right, about ADUs. When we conclude our presentation, we are gonna host a small question and answer period. So save your questions for the end. Take as many notes as you like to take. They're going to be here for a little while to answer all of your questions. We have some awesome professionals in the room as well that you can speak to about, taxes, financing, et cetera, et cetera. And you had a little tidbit for everyone as well.
Yeah, so we have a little teaser. So I don't know if you've heard over the last year or so, the news floating around about ADUs, thanks to AB 1033, which passed, that allows you as a homeowner that has an ADU on your property, you can sell off that ADU as its own property. So fun fact, 50% of ADUs across the country have already been sold off and are no longer rentals. So California is now next in line. But we're going to let our experts take over and give you guys all the information.
All right, so hand it off to Susan. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Miguel. Thank you, David. Okay, I'm Susan FEFFERMAN, and I've worked for a lot of different ADU companies since 2018, when it kind of became mainstream, if you will. As time has gone on, obviously, things just keep changing for the better. So I'm gonna share a presentation with you that I put together, and I just want to tell you ahead of time, I made it very content heavy. There's a lot of information. If you want to take a picture of the screen, because it's just a lot of stuff, I'm okay with that. So let's just get to it. And we're going to talk about why it still makes sense to build an ADU in San Diego and California, for that matter. So mostly, it kind of all came about to address our housing situation. They know that over the next 30 years that our population is going to continue to increase. And San Diego is now the 8th largest city in the United States, and there's 1.4 million residents currently, and the entire county has 3.3 million people here. By 2030, which is only 6 years from now, they expect it to increase by 200,000 people. So in the next 20 years, there could be another million people here. And hence, there's going to be a greater demand for housing. And in addition, the way to be able to live in San Diego is to have affordable housing. And right now, San Diego is considered one of the most expensive cities in the whole United States. And that's really, it's just mostly because of the real estate. So, there's a supply and demand situation, but there's also this, increased population. So this is just to talk a little bit about the benefits of an ADU. So number one, creating an ADU on your property is going to provide the homeowner with either additional rental income, if you're going to use it for that. It could also increase your property value by adding more square footage. It could be a way for you to move into and rent your main house out and give you an opportunity to downsize and cut your costs as well. It's also great for rental, for people who are in the rental industry, or rental market, I should say. They will offer more affordable housing in desirable neighborhoods, promoting community diversity and inclusivity. So right now, a lot of people who, we know that why ADUs work is because the cost to build is way less than buying a brand new home. However, because the rents are so high here, it can offset your new mortgage, your loan payment, whatever you're using to pay for that ADU tenfold. And I think for renters, if they can get into a neighborhood that in other circumstances might have been prohibitive because of the cost of, let's say, an apartment or condo or what have you, they can get into an ADU and live in a place that is more desirable for them. Also, ADUs offer versatile opportunity for multi-generational living. As we know, kids go to college, they get out of college, they don't necessarily get a job right away. They move back in with mom and dad, and maybe then the grandparents are unhealthy and they need to move in too. So this is a way to allow many generations living together to save money, to save time, and bringing families together. So you have to ask yourself, who are you building for when you're considering an ADU? Are you building for your parents? And if you are, then there's a lot of variables that you want to take into consideration. Universal design, so being able to live in a space that's safe, grab bars, the zero threshold showers, place you can walk around or move around easily if you have a walker or a wheelchair or what have you. So that would also be the ADA compliant. And how does this person want to, do they cook? Do they garden? What are their hobbies? So you want to take those into consideration. If it's a rental, then you want to think about how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, because the more bedrooms, the more people you'll be able to collect rent from, the higher amount of rent. Is there privacy? You want to make sure that when someone is coming to look at it to rent, those are usually like the top things that people are going to look at, is the privacy as well. And the access. How easy is it to get to their, front door? Do they have to walk a block and a half away with their groceries on a rainy day? How easy is it to get to the unit? And durable finishes, because after renting a place for so much time and they move out, people don't treat your property the way they would treat it if they owned it, and you may have to replace some things, so you want to make sure it's durable. If it's going to be your future home, then you want to think about, the design, the style, the finishes, a place that you're going to want to move into, either right away or after it's being rented. Plus storage. Storage is super important when you're downsizing to a smaller space. And again, the lifestyle choices. I don't know that I recommend building an ADU before selling a home, because from what I've been told, and Meredith can actually speak to this when she comes up, you don't always get your money's worth in the end. So I won't spend a lot of time on that one. So those are the questions you want to ask yourself. And this always comes up. What's the difference between an ADU and a JADU, which is a junior ADU? So the difference basically is an ADU, you can build up to 1,200 square feet. If it's attached to the primary house, you can only build 50% of the square footage of the primary home. If it's a 2,000 square foot home and you're attaching it, then 1,000 square feet. If it's detached, up to 1,200. I think actually the city of Poway allows you to go up to 1,500. So again, it depends on the jurisdiction you're in as well. The maximum that a JADU can be is 500 square feet, and it has to come from existing square footage of the primary home. You can convert a garage into a JADU, but it can't be bigger than 500 square feet. And again, some of these rules have changed depending on the jurisdiction that you're in. City of San Diego, and Meredith might be able to speak to this too, City of San Diego has a lot of bonus things where you can actually, I think, maybe build a detached JADU now, or?
You can build unlimited ADUs on a single family zoned property. It's more complicated than that, but the largest one, most people build 6 to 8 units on the larger single family lots. There's one going up in like the North Park or something area that has 125 units. It basically looks like an apartment building, but it's just a workaround for zoning.
Can you then build a JADU from one of those ADUs that's detached from the primary home?
Yeah, the rule, that's unrelated. So City of San Diego has gone above and beyond the state laws.
Yeah, okay.
And there's other municipalities that are doing that.
Okay, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. In an ADU, you have to have a full kitchen. You have to be able to cook, clean, and so you need a full stove, you need countertops, you need a sink. In a JADU, you're only required to have an efficiency kitchen, which basically can just be a smaller sink, refrigerator, microwave, something like that. An ADU has to have a full bathroom, toilet, shower, tub. A JADU can share a bathroom with the primary home. So let's say you convert the garage and you have a door going into the main house still, that who's ever living there can go into the main house and use the bathroom in there. So whatever the, the situation is, but you don't need a bathroom for a JADU. The ADU has to have adequate space for a bed, so it's got to have a designated sleeping area, and the JADU does not. It can just be an open plan studio. You need a separate entrance for both, but the JADU doesn't necessarily need access to the primary. So if you decide to put a bathroom in the JADU, it can be closed off from the primary. Parking, ADU depends on the zoning. For a JADU, none is required. And a lot of people are actually making JADUs not just necessarily from garages. They might have a house that has a downstairs second guest suite, and they're converting that. And so basically closing it off from the main house, putting in another entrance and a little kitchenette, and as long as it's under 500 square feet, it's a JADU. So, and I think then in that case, your taxes also aren't affected quite like adding square footage, will be. ADU, owner occupancy, I think it's actually gone away. I don't think.
You don't have to stay there forever.
Right.
You have to build the multiple ones. You have to be owner occupied, and then you can move.
Got it. Okay.
I know that just changed.
Yeah, it's still things are still constantly moving. For a JADU, owner occupancy is required, which means as the owner, you have to either live in the primary home or you can live in the JADU. You have your choice. Parking for the primary, for an ADU, it's not required to replace the garage if you convert the garage. The JADU, it's still required if you replace the garage, and I think parking, you still have to have on-site parking, so a driveway, or side of the house, you can designate as parking. And for an ADU, as far as building requirements go, an ADU has to have a permanent foundation, insulation, and utility connections, so sewer, water, electricity. For a JADU, it's the same, but it doesn't need to have separate sewer if you're using the bathroom in the primary home. Okay. So I wasn't sure if this was going to be a lot of real estate agents, so it doesn't really matter whether you're a real estate agent or just a homeowner. If you are in the market to look for a new house, let's say that has the ability to build an ADU, the things you want to look for that are the easiest to build and get through the city permit-wise would be a single-family zoned property. If it has a detached garage, that is much easier as well. A walkable neighborhood, an area that can command high rents, like North Park is probably, one of those high rent areas. A place that has the fee waivers in place, and those are fees that you used to get charged for pulling permits, and now a lot of them have gone away. A backyard that offers privacy, either alley access where you can enter it, off the alley and not in front of the house. A corner lot or a deep lot. So these are, things you would want to look for, but sometimes if you're already in a home and you just want to build an ADU and you don't have the benefit of buying a whole new, property, there's many, many ways to make it work. This is just a little picture of a before. So this was a detached garage, and they actually had to, because it had a very low ceiling and you have to have, like I mentioned, that permanent foundation, they had to raise the foundation, and in doing so, it was no longer an 8-foot ceiling. So they actually had to raise the ceiling, put in all new beams, and they figured while they're at it, they might as well just make it a vaulted ceiling. And the higher the ceiling, the more space the ADU will feel. So, those are things that when we start to talk about cost, that you want to take into consideration, because there's a lot of things that go into the design portion. And when you're designing, you know, if you decide, oh, you know what, I want a 10-foot ceiling, and I want huge windows, I want one of those systems where the doors just open, you know, like you have over here. Those all have to go into the design portion if they're structural, and they add a lot of cost to your project. So, but this was the end result, and where the door and the slider or the French doors are, that was the garage door originally. So they, you know, they raised everything, they raised the roof, they added a cute little deck, and all of the utilities are hidden under this deck here. So it was, you know, it was a good design, and it came out super cute. So just talking about regulations and zoning, understanding your local regulations and zoning is crucial for a successful implementation of your ADU. San Diego alone has 18 different jurisdictions, and they, even though they have to follow the state guidelines, they can, like Meredith said, they can actually insert their own as long as they're following the basic California guidelines. But it's super important to know, you know, where you're building and what are those regulations, you know, in that zone. You know, working with a reputable and experienced architect, draftsperson, designer is also crucial. If you have the wrong person designing your, you know, your unit, it could actually cost you a lot more money. And I think I'm an interior designer, and I know from other interior designers, there's a little bit of ego, and a lot of times people just want to design something beautiful, but they don't take into consideration, what is the cost? You know, I mean, what does it actually cost for those doors and windows and the insulation and flooring and what have you? So another important component. So here's where we're going to get into some of the heavy duty stuff. And again, you can take a picture of it if you want, and I'm going to just kind of go through this. But as we know, these are current 2024 laws and regulations. So the type of ADUs that you can build in San Diego is pretty much every residential property in California is allowed to have one ADU up to 800 square feet, regardless of the lot size, the floor area ratio, or the main residence size. So it used to be, I live in Carlsbad, and prior to all of this, the biggest unit you could build was 600 square feet, no matter what. It didn't matter. Now it's 800, and again, the lot size doesn't matter. They don't take into consideration, you know, these other things. And it can go up to 16 feet in height. So that's a, you know, pretty high unit. If space permits, the state regulations allow you to build one attached ADU, one detached ADU, and one JADU all on the same property, if you have enough space, you know, for that. And some of the cities do have, their guidelines will say that your ADU has to be at least 6 or 10 feet away from the primary home. So for people who are just trying to cram as many units as they can, they might not be able to do that. So again, knowing your regulations of your jurisdiction is super important. ADUs can be converted from almost any accessory structure or space on the property, including garages, attics, basements. And they can also be built above garages. So I don't have a slide in here talking about the kinds of ADUs, but basically it can either be a garage conversion, or you can build above the garage, or you can build attached to the house, or you can build a detached unit. Those are the four, you know, types of ADUs. Again, no minimum lot size requirement is required. They're also allowed on multi-family zone lots. So, you know, if you have a property that's got a primary house, maybe 2 units, you can build an ADU, you know, on there as well. And, you know, this is a newer law over the last few years. Every multifamily property is allowed at least one ADU converted from an existing space in the primary structure, and then 2 detached ADUs. So for buildings with 8 or more units, you're also allowed to add up to 25% of the number of units in your building. So literally you could have like another 4 to 6 or something. It's a lot. So talking about the sizes, we talked about that, most cities, they allow at least 850 square feet for a 1-bedroom ADU and at least 1,000 if the ADU has 2 or more bedrooms. Cities can't impose smaller maximum sizes like I mentioned with Carlsbad. They can't do that anymore, other than the 800 square foot size that we previously saw. But they can impose larger. So they can say you cannot build, more than 1,200 square feet. And again, I think Poway's 1,500 square feet. So let's see. So we already talked about all of that. Garage conversions do not have a size limit as long as you stay within the existing footprint. So for example, if you have a 2,000 square foot barn on your property, the entire structure can be converted as long as you don't expand the existing footprint. Okay, and with regards to setbacks and heights, the setback refers to the distance from the ADU to the edge of the property. And for ADU, setbacks can be up to 4 feet from the side and rear. In some cities, like San Diego, they actually have a zero setback. Because there's a lot of properties in this city that, they're older and they were literally built right on the property line. And maybe it wasn't the property line at the time, but later on when properties got divided, that's where they drew the line. So there are a lot of those, which means you don't have to tear it down and build a new property 4 feet in. Front setbacks, this is important, depend on the jurisdiction. However, if your city's front setback requirements hinder your ability to build an 800 square foot ADU on your property, then front setbacks cannot be enforced. And this is known as a state exemption. So again, you want to make sure that you're speaking to the right architect, designer, who knows your jurisdiction and what they will and won't allow. As mentioned earlier, the 16-foot must be allowed for every ADU in California under any circumstance. However, 18 feet is allowed if it's within a half a mile walking distance from public transit, like a bus stop or a train station. And the reason why is this allows you to accommodate a second story. So it's more for that, loft type of building, condo type of building, for, let's say, multi-family zoning. That's going to allow you to build a little bit more. 25 foot is allowed if the ADU is going to be attached to the main residence, regardless of its height. And again, this also depends on your local zoning code. Whichever is the lowest is going to apply. So parking, I think this is an important one because off-street parking means it has to be on the property, not on the street. And it is required for ADUs. There needs to be 1 per unit or bedroom, if you will, except in the following circumstances. If the ADU is located a half a mile walking distance from the public transit, then you don't have to provide parking. If it's within an architecturally or historically significant district, you don't have to provide parking. If it's converted from existing space or an existing ADU, you don't have to. On-street parking permits, if on-street parking permits are required, but they're not offered to the occupant of the ADU, then you have to provide parking. A car share vehicle, if a car share vehicle is located within 1 block of the ADU, and similarly, if you're converting your garage, your city can't require you to replace the off-street parking space. So, and then these are just some miscellaneous regulations. Fire sprinklers are only required in the ADU if they are required in the primary home. So a lot of newer houses that have sprinklers, if you're gonna build a detached unit or even an attached unit, you're gonna have to put fire sprinklers in. Properties with a new built detached ADUs must have solar panels either on the ADU itself or on the main house, and modular or prefab ADUs are exempt from this requirement. I was talking to Paul with Sunrun over here, who has a lot more information on solar if you're interested in talking to him later. HOAs can no longer prohibit an ADU. However, HOAs still have their guidelines that you have to follow in terms of either converting a garage or adding on to the particular main house. Removal of development and impact fees on units that are less than 750 square feet are completely removed. Over that 750 square feet, it's a percentage, I think, of the size of the unit, maybe. Yeah.
And it depends on the location.
Again, so depends on your jurisdiction. What Miguel had mentioned, or David mentioned about the selling of the ADUs, condoization, this is now a new thing. I don't know a lot about it. I think Meredith probably knows more. She'll share that with you. So this is very exciting, I think, in San Diego and California, especially for people who have children who could never otherwise afford to buy their own ADU. This might give them an opportunity to own some property and start building up, an asset. And there's also heavier consequences for cities that are not in compliance. The Housing and Community Development Agency in Sacramento, they oversee this now. So, people have to follow the rules. So real quick, briefly, when looking at cost, size matters. And the reason why is the smaller the unit, the more expensive per square foot. And I actually had a conversation with a contractor today who told me he cringes every time people ask, well, what's your cost per square foot? Because there are so many other variables that come into play when you are building. It's really, really difficult to give somebody just a general, rule of thumb, but people still want it. So with that being said, right now these are post-COVID prices, and we all know everything has gone up exorbitantly, in the last 3 years. So for a 400 square foot ADU, it's somewhere around $450 a square foot. So it's going to cost you about $180,000. And then it goes down, like I said, the bigger the unit. And the reason why the price, is less for a larger unit is because the kitchens and baths are the most expensive square footage. It has plumbing, it has electricity, it has sewer, it has all the utilities in those spaces. So that's why those rooms are most expensive. Fixed costs are your building, the foundation, the walls, the roof, the windows and the doors. Those are usually, pretty standard from unit to unit. As long as the contractor is following, whatever the requirements are of that jurisdiction, and the permits. And bedrooms, hallways, closets, and living rooms, which is really just a window and carpet and a couple doors. Those are the least, cost per square foot. So hence why 1,000 square feet is less than a 400 square foot unit. And there's still, with that being said, there's still room in the market to build because the rents have also gone up. So again, rents have gone up, even though building costs have gone up, it's still at a deficit, I think, of, building. So it still does, make sense. And Meredith will be talking about loans and financing and, why it makes financial sense. So this is the last thing I want to share with you is you also want to think about when you are considering an ADU, these top 3 things. What is the value an ADU is going to bring to you? Does it keep you from spending $4,000 to $6,000 per month on assisted living for facilities for a parent? Quite honestly, once they get into memory care, you're talking $8,000 to $10,000 a month, and I don't know how many people out there can actually swing that easily. It's a lot. Does it bring in an additional $2,500 or more in rental income every month? Offsetting your mortgage. Does it allow you to downsize and live mortgage-free? So those are the 3 things, I think, the 3 most important things. There's other things to ask yourself, but I think that those are, really important questions. I'm not even going to go over how the appraisal works. I'm going to let Meredith do that. So without further ado, I want to welcome Meredith Munger. And thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Hi, I'm Meredith Munger with ADU Loans. I want to thank our hosts so much for having us here. Let's see, how do we click to exit? Brandon. We can switch over to mine. I am the largest ADU lender in the state. I work up and down the state with more than 900 contractors. I'm glad to see Caval Construction, well-known, great reputation builder. So I see construction bids and everything across my desk all day long. Thank you. And I've been doing this since 2017, so there's a lot of, to me, I'm super bullish on ADUs. How many people here are realtors or in the industry? Okay, how many people are homeowners here? Homeowners? Okay, cool. Thank you, that helps me understand. So the very first thing you wanna do, like any investment, is you wanna run the numbers. Why a pre-approval? And I do mean a full pre-approval, like a financial colonoscopy, send me your taxes, send me your W-2s, I want it all, right? Even if you do the loan later. Why? Because I've seen too many people spend $40,000 to $50,000 on designs and permits to build a champagne castle when they're actually on a beer budget and they didn't know it. So you get pre-approved first, and then if we do this right, you build to that budget, right? There's no down payments, there's no out-of-pocket costs, that kind of thing. So we start with that. And this is a very different process than your traditional real estate. It's much more collaborative, over up to 15 months, even sometimes years. So I tell them their number, then I wait. And they turn around and say, contractor, this is what I got, what can you build for me? The other thing we're gonna do is we're gonna optimize for either sale or rental income. As you've heard, you can build up to 3 additional units on your property. I am very bullish on the sale of ADUs. We see, and you'll see this later, sales of ADUs bring up to $100,000 more return on investment over a 10-year period than renting. So most people start without looking at their ROI, think, oh, I need to build this huge, I've got room for a 3-bedroom, 3-bath, that's gonna optimize my rent. In fact, it's optimizing the number of kids in your backyard, beating the crap out of your property. So what we find is, if you have space, if you want to rent, if you have space for a 3-bedroom, build 3 1-bedrooms. Now think of this. You build 2,500, 2,500, 2,500, that's 7,500. Oftentimes in San Diego, a 3-bedroom home will rent for 4,500, 4,000, 5,000. So ironically, you're optimizing for high quality renters, young professionals who are at work all day, grandmas are great renters, you have the most beautiful garden and you get extra cookies for free, and they're paying on those. To give you a sense, in San Diego with the ADU bonus program, which is tied to low and moderate income, 1-bedroom for low income, you can charge $2,100 in rent right now in the city of San Diego. Dang. Yes, moderate income, $2,700. Yeah, I'm in, right? It's a 15-year lien to do the ADU bonus program. We'll talk about that later. But so that's what we're optimizing for. Now, if you want to sell it off, building the big unit is oftentimes the best way to go, not the individual 1-bedrooms. So we got to plan that in advance before you spend a dime of money and time. And then finally, you want to strategically plan the entire property. I have a lot of people who come to me and say, oh, juniors at SDSU, I want to build them a 1-bedroom, you know, or whatever. We need to think strategically about the larger property, not just next year, but over the next 10, 20 years, okay? So you need to know that mortgage guidelines are different than permit guidelines. As you just heard, permit guidelines are issued by the state and local municipalities. And they do not talk to my mortgage big gorilla, right? Fannie Mae, who's back in DC going, what are those crazy Californians doing? So you might want to build 3 ADUs on a property, but Fannie Mae and the other GSEs only allow 1 ADU on the property, but they allow unlimited room additions, office spaces, rumpus rooms, all kinds of things that we can get built and expanded. We just got to be a little clever about it, okay? Most important, what we're seeing is appraisals. So Fannie Mae guidelines are slowly, molasses-like, moving toward what they should be, which is treating them like an R unit, R2, R3, R4, whatever. But right now, in traditional mortgage land, an ADU is not a rentable thing. It is a shed or a pool house, traditionally not a rentable structure. So appraisal guidelines tell appraisers right off the bat, you may not factor in square footage of the ADU into the gross living area. And as a result, I have a lot of clients come to me when they're refinancing whatever construction loan they used because they've gotten a $0 value appraisal on a 3-bedroom, 1,200 square foot ADU. Well, that's just not common sense. So back in 2019, I partnered with the Appraisal Institute. We have more than 250 trained appraisers. A lot of them just retired. We're doing another training. But yesterday I was battling an ADU in Los Angeles. The guy gave us 2-bedroom, 1-bath. To buy a 2-bedroom, 1-bath in that neighborhood was $700,000. He gave it a $10,000 value. That's just dumb. So we are battling that, and we need to think about that. My appraisers, we only use trained appraisers. Let me give you the converse, because there's 3 other ways to value an ADU if the appraiser is not lazy and trained. So another example is I have an investor who buys houses in right next to Warner Brothers Studios, and he rents them out to actors and their entourages for up to $23,000 a month in short-term rental income. So they were buying these houses, adding an ADU in back for $200,000, bought them for $1.3, $200,000 build. An average appraiser was giving it $1.4 million. My appraiser gave it $2.1 million because it was like, yeah, that's called marketability. So it's important to be, if you're not working with us, you have to be proactive and even aggressive. Don't wait for them to do their job. Do their job for them. Give them the rental comps. Give them the sales comps. Give them everything they need. Show them the construction budget. I have the client go out with them and be like, it's going to be massive, you know? And here's what we're doing in this and that. Get their imagination going because they do have a tough time. I'll give you another example here in San Diego I'm super happy about. I work with a lot of, I call them house hackers. Young millennial buyers. I have a 29-year-old gal. This is her second house she's bought with me. First house she bought in La Mesa, and she bought a house, built an ADU using renovation loans with me. She's grossing $12,500 a month on those 2, and her monthly mortgage payment there is maybe $4,500. She just bought in January on 35th Street in San Diego because she's looking for the ADU bonus program. Bought at $825,000. She's converting an existing garage space and a detached garage into 2 ADUs. Actually, it's not 2 ADUs because it's a renovation loan. It's 1 ADU and a room conversion. And it's already been appraised by my trained renovation appraiser. ARV is 1.68. Bought it for $825,000, value at $1.68 million. So that's the difference. Like, this is the Wild West. What does an ADU cost? I see budgets all day long. The attached ADUs are on average $100,000, sometimes more, sometimes less. In Southern California, I'm seeing the prices come down. They start at $175 on a basic detached ADU. Why the difference? And this is important for you guys to assess your own properties as well as for buyers, et cetera. In this example, you can see the foundation is the same with the garage and the house, and the footings are probably the same too. The footings are in the corner. By housing regulations, they got to be about 1 foot deep. So we don't have to raise up the foundation. Similarly, the roof and the roof trussing is the same. So all we're really doing is gutting this, and voila, you have a JADU. Now, pro tip, Super important. And one of the major reasons, we'll keep talking about this, the incredible importance with an ADU expert. An amateur would slap a door here, and it's really awkward as you run into your renters every day, all the time, okay? An ADU pro would put a door here, or even better here, and their front yard's over there. Privacy, doors, and space really matter. The worst problems are when you have a sliding glass door on the back of the house and a sliding glass door on the ADU, and it's really awkward in that morning as you're walking through your living room, right? Privacy commands higher rents as well as quality of life. The detached garages, this is why they cost more. Look at that. That's probably a 3-foot slab with no reinforced rebar, which is why it has cracks. So that's either got to be demolished or reinforced off the bat. And you can see the roof and the roof trussing. It's not even close, right? You're going to have to totally rebuild that. Pretty thin walls. Now, I would say that you would demolish the whole thing, except, look at this. This is all the way back to that line, right? Probably the property line. I have seen inexperienced contractors who've never built an ADU say, oh, I'll just demolish the whole thing, when the architect told them, no, you have to leave that wall up. City comes by, everything's demolished. They have to move the whole thing in by 4 feet and restart. So that's the importance. ADUs really are different than a custom-built house, and I do those too. So every $100,000 you spend on an ADU at today's stupid high rates is $800 a month. This is a 10% interest-only HELOC on a 30-year term, okay? So people are like, oh my gosh, 10%, I can't believe it. Oh my God, I'm gonna die. $800 a month. And the rental income, minimum, right? In North Park, it's $2,500. We'll show you how to do it. Next year, as rates come down, every $100,000 should cost you $500. Conversely, move the decimal point. Every $10,000 you spend is going to be $50. So we'll talk about that in a second. So rates are high, but rents are even higher. Okay, what's the cost of buying today in San Diego? Like per square foot. 800 per square foot. I would agree with that. I see the cost of building on average these days about $300 to $325 per square foot. It's a third of the cost, and you're getting a brand new custom built. That's a no-brainer. Now, imagine selling these off as new houses. You think they'll sell better than the other neighborhood houses? Damn straight. So how do we know what they're going to rent for or sell? Now, I know a lot of realtors, we hate Zillow, we all do, but we cannot look at apartments. Think about it for yourself. Would you rather live in an apartment where you can hear everything your neighbors are doing, you've got no space, no patio, or would you rather live in what feels like a single family home, custom build, maybe you got a little front porch, that kind of thing? So I go on Zillow, I click for rent, and I deselect apartments and townhomes. I don't think Zumper and Rentometer do as well of a job because I want to look right in your neighborhood, right? Like College area is different than Del Cerro is different than North Park, right? They're all within like a mile of each other, but Zumper's not telling you that. So, and then I'm going to select, I got to check out what's my ROI. In this example, look at this. In North Park at this time, when I took the snapshot, $3,000 a month for a 1-bedroom ADU. These are all ADUs. So, and then you get the outliers like $1,300 in Encanto, probably not very nice area. And then you got people who aren't paying attention to the market, $1,900, $1,800, or they're just not very nice properties. So we know from this that 1-bedrooms in North Park at that moment are going for $3,000 a piece. Now I happened to look at 3-bedrooms and they were going for $5,000 to $6,000. So no doubt in my mind, I would rather have 3 1-bedroom units for $9,000 than build a same size 3-bedroom house for $5,000 or $6,000, right? So those are the kinds of things we got to look at. And this is as part of your pre-approval. These are the numbers we're going to run and look at it. If you sold it and put it into the stock market at 5%, this would be over 10 years and versus renting over time, okay? Almost always, I see 100,000 more at least in this column. That's what's really interesting to watch. So we're not planning for just next year and do a loan and see ya. We're planning for 15, 10, 20 years. So how do we pay for this? This is also an important thing to note, especially with high rates. Loans are just a tool. So there's an old saying, you marry the house, you date the rate. So my goal during construction is, my goal is to finance 100% of the loan, but I don't want you being crushed by a loan while you're waiting for some guy to stamp permits, okay? So lowest monthly payment is important. So during the construction phase, your loan is temporary. Temporary, super important to know, and I'll explain why. When we're done, that's when we're gonna do your classic 30-year fix, because your goals totally changed. You're done building, you got the rental income, now your goal is to cheaply and quickly pay it off. Those are two totally different types of loans, okay? So most people are not doing a cash out refinance. Most of my clients are doing home equity lines of credit, okay? And we have 15 to 20, but home equity line of credit is a type of mortgage. It is, in this case, a second mortgage, could be a first mortgage, and it works like a credit card. So as you saw, at today's high rates, if you drop a check for $10,000 to start designs over the next 3 months, you get a bill next month for 83 bucks. Yeah, at 10% interest. Whoa. So now it's like, maybe 10% isn't that bad. What's your cash flow, right? What do you care the rate you're paying if you're cash flowing like a king? So we can go up to 95% of current value. Our construction HELOC is based on future value. Now, what the heck am I talking about with construction and renovation loans? Construction renovation loans are another type of mortgage loan, either a first or second mortgage. And what's different about them from traditional loans is that quite literally they're based on future value. I literally send the appraiser out with the pretty architectural designs and the floor plans and the rental comps and the sales comps, and he says, oh, I see what you're gonna do. When you build your ADU, it's gonna be worth so much more. And that's the loan, the number, that future value is what we base the loan number on. So in this example, let's say that current value is $700,000 and your credit union's offering you a cash out or a HELOC up to 80% loan to value. That doesn't really give me the cash available to build what I need to build, right? But even if I get a lowball appraisal from some ding-dong appraiser, I'm just saying, because on the HELOCs I can build up to 90% of future value, on the renovation refinances I can build up to 97% loan to value, that gives us the cash available to build. Renovation refinances also allow us to factor in future rental income. So if you're not qualified to take out a normal type of loan, even if you have the equity, sometimes we'll go to a renovation loan so that, hey, we're like, hey, you're gonna get $2,500, let's factor that in. Rental properties are very similar. We do have convention conforming renovation loans and stuff like that for them. We have HELOCs on rental properties up to 75% loan to value. And we've got construction bridge loans. Much more complicated loans. Let's talk. We do have HECA mortgages are great for seniors, people who are retired, have very little income, but have a ton of equity, at least 60%. And I'm gonna, dare I say it, it's a type of reverse mortgage. But it's a reverse mortgage created by our good friends at the Federal Housing Administration, right? The same folks who do the first-time homebuyer programs. They didn't like reverse mortgages, so they created something that had a lot of consumer protections. So a lot of my seniors will refinance into a HECA, called the HECA mortgage, home equity conversion mortgage, as a temporary loan. It creates a line of credit to build the ADU. They have no mortgage payment if they choose during that phase. When they're done, 50% of my clients refinance back to a traditional mortgage, a forward mortgage, and their renter pays off that loan, maybe $1,000 a month, and then they're getting $1,500 in income. The other 50% really enjoy having no payment, and the value of their house is going up so much in Southern California that it's outpacing what they're using in equity, so it doesn't really matter. This is your timeline. This is worth a screenshot. So we are here, and rates are stupid high. So designs are going to take about 3 months. On a typical 1-bedroom, simple design, you're looking at $15,000. Permits in San Diego are down to 4 months, but I'd still say 6 months just in case. That's going to take $10,000. If your property has a higher degree of difficulty, septic, 2 stories, crummy soils, hillsides, those are going to cost more, but that gives you a sense of what it is. And then construction is going to be 3 to 8 months, depending on the size. Like a garage conversion is as quick as 3 months. Bigger projects are up to 8 months. This is where you really spend your money. This is where you really spend your money. So you kind of have 2 strategies. Get pre-approved so you know what your number is. You can use cash during that phase, and I just wait. That's fine. And then we can do a loan with much more flexibility. Or take the HELOC out. You spend your $10,000, you get a bill for $83, and as rates come down, it's $73 and $60 and whatever. It should be about $50 about here, okay? And this is the decision either way. Both are valid strategies. But if you get your permits back with either way and rates are stupid high and you're not comfortable, that's okay. Your permits are good for 2 years and they are renewable. So I think actually prices are as low as they're going to go on construction because there's no demand, right? In COVID, I saw $50,000 more on pretty much every price level. That was my experience as a lender. Today, I'm seeing as low on a 1-bedroom, as 175 on the detached. Before they were 250. So the minute inflation comes down, all my clients are going to be like, I want an 80, oh my God, right? And it's going to be like COVID, where you can't find a handyman for 6 months. So everybody is going to, he's like, yeah, it is. And so, and then all your materials are going to go up. So you can pay a higher interest rate now on a little bit of money to create optionality, or you can pay higher prices later. Your choice. While you're at it, you got guys stomping through your yard, you're doing this big loan. Strategically plan the property. Do not, if you want just one ADU now, great, but don't slap it in the middle of your property. Put it in a back corner. You never know in the future if grandma's going to move home, the kids are going to move home, you want to downsize, sell the front house, whatever. But by putting in the back corner, it gives you optionality to build more. You can use that loan to fix up the house, remodel, deferred maintenance, all that kind of stuff. ADUs for family, big question, and I'll let you read. But let's imagine that mom and dad own this house and all the land, and Junior wants to build an ADU. But his siblings don't want him inheriting the property. You're fine, inheriting the property and kind of taking over everything. That's okay. We can do a number of things. We can title it as joint tenants. This is where title is super important in your escrow people, so that mom and dad own the house and the land still, but Junior owns the ADU. So when mom and dad pass away, they can bequeath the property as they see fit, but Junior still owns his ADU, so the kid's got to work it out. My recommendation, and this goes back to strategic planning, go big. I swear my son yesterday was 3 years old, and now he's 21, and my daughter is 18. So I am building 2 3-bedroom ADUs in the backyard. They will cost $300,000 each, which is approximately $1,500. By the way, where can you buy or rent a 3-bedroom house for $1,500, right? So I told them, guys, you can rent it out to your buddies, $1,000 a room, which is pretty reasonable, and basically grow into it. When you get married and have kids, by then you should have it paid off, and you will have no housing payment when you have kids. because I want my kids and grandkids near me. And I have one lady in West Covina. She's like, I'm going to be the coolest grandma ever. We're creating a Pirates of the Caribbean backyard, adding a pool. There's going to be vines hanging. I'm like, you go get them, Tiger. So she's having fun. Property taxes. Property taxes are not reassessed on the house and the land. The ADU, when it's done, is tacked on to the end. You're going to see, how do they know? Your contractor or whoever's submitting your permits, they are asked, how much is this going to cost? Let me give you a hint. It's not the cost you're actually going to pay, okay? Because a tax assessor takes that number, multiplies it by 1%. On a small build, I typically see $100 a month. How good is that? Insurance should be $20 a month unless you sell it off, in which case you need a new policy. ADU grant, California Housing Finance Authority has a $40,000 grant. It is currently closed. I'm on their working group. 90% of grant recipients for the last 2 years were my clients. So I'll keep you posted. I cannot stress enough. I work with more than 900 contractors across the state. I do not give referral fees. I don't get referral fees. My occupational hazard is a scary contractor, and I'm just as afraid of them as you are. So I keep myself surrounded with great contractors who give me an all-in bid. The black hole of lending is when you are halfway through construction and you run out of money. You're pretty much, your only option at that point is a double-digit refinance of your first mortgage and everything else. It's a nightmare, right? Banks don't want to take on your ham and egged project. They don't want to take on grandpa's handiwork and hope that it's permitted. So my biggest concern is lowball bids. Construction bids are pretty much all the same. It's the cost of materials and the cost of labor, and those are usually dollar for dollar. And then you get a 15% to 15 to 20% profit margin from the GC, either spread out through the numbers or tacked on at the end. But more or less, all the bids should be about $5,000 to $10,000 between each other. And at that point, don't worry about $10,000. Focus on chemistry, style, references, all that stuff. If you're getting a $25,000 lower bid or $50,000 lower bid, beware. That's somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, and they want to get into the ADU business, and you're going to be their first guinea pig, or it's a shyster. And either way, they're going to come back to you and say, mid-construction, say, I'm sorry, I need another $50,000. That makes me crazy. So that's my big warning on that. Last thing, value engineering. Another great reason to use a great contractor. These guys know how to build. You can read here, but I'll give you an example. I had a client in LA who worked with a beautiful architect, but they're building a 400 square foot, one bedroom ADU, and the guy had multiple roof lines. Contractor comes back and say, if I build those beautiful roof lines, I have to hand build the entire roof with a gang of guys. That's gonna cost you $100,000. So they reversed that, redesigned it, resubmitted for quick permit approval. Fortunately, they were able to get it. And they built with factory-built trusses. So you can see, like they're the square things you see. Just pop them on a roof, buy them from a factory, save the guys $100,000. So I would encourage you to work with design build teams or contractors who work with ADU architects, and you'll see them work very closely together. They have pairs, you'll see it. It makes a huge difference in your cost. And I often see clients get into their own way in increasing designs. Listen to your contractor. Factory-built homes are on the up and up. This is mostly for the Bay Area. It's way cheaper to stick build down here, just being honest. Tiny homes on wheels are not homes. They're RVs. They're tagged as RVs. So they're financed as RVs. They don't add value. Stay away. This looks awful, won't make sense now, but these are the types of individual spreadsheets we work up. There's actually 4 pages to it in terms of your monthly cash flow, rent versus sale, all kinds of things. We will work this up with every single client. You can book time on my calendar. Please do not call me. I'm hard to reach. I'm just going to be honest, because I do a half-hour strategy call minimum with every single client. You should know your numbers. You should feel 100% confident and ecstatic to move forward that this is the best investment decision of your life. So with that, I'm going to open it up and.
Before we go there, I want to invite Susan back on. Thank you. First and foremost, thank you. Weren't they great? Yes. All the couple people in the room first. Alex Alvarez out there. So thank you, Alex, for putting all this together. And Brandon with New Venture Escrow, who allowed us this beautiful space. It's his birthday. So if you registered through Eventbrite, we filmed the presentation, we have the decks, we're going to email those to you as well, okay? If you did not register through Eventbrite, please make sure to leave your email with us on that sign-up list so that we can get the presentations out to you as well. So without further ado, we want to open it up to questions, and we'll let you guys take the floor. This is just really good. Yeah. Questions? Anyone have a question? Yes.
I just had a little question. If you sell the EDU, you're only selling the property sort of like a condo.
Yes, it is a cloud condominium. There's two ways to sell off the ADUs. One is currently available. It's called SB9, and it is a lot split. The problem with that is basically with lot splits, the city splits it for you. So you have a bunch of bureaucrats doing the work. It's expensive. It's costly. It's basically never happened. So AB 1033 has not yet been adopted by the municipalities. City of San Diego should have it fully adopted. They're on track by the end of the year. A couple of others will be as well. But you basically create a cloud condo with, it's an HOA with no HOA fee unless you want them, shared driveways or some things. Some people will have shared utilities, some won't. It's personalized, but our title companies and HOA companies will be working those up, yes.
Well, my question is kind of, if we did that and then we said, oh, we're going to sell and move away. So it's like a blank space in your yard that they still own it, but.
Normally you would build the ADU and that's what you're selling off.
Okay.
Yeah, some investors are buying yards though, and they will pay for the split. I know a number of investors doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, for a detached garage, that's, say, 400 square feet, can you clarify, can that be a JADU, or is it the garage
No.
attached to the home?
A junior ADU has to be attached to the home.
But not built attached, right? Like you can't build a 500 square foot attached to the house and call it a JADU. It has to come from existing space already.
Sometimes it's double permitting. You build the space as a room addition, and then you have it re-permitted as a junior ADU.
So maybe part two to that question is, you mentioned the whole barn, 2,000 square foot barn. So let's say you have a 10,000 square foot lot in South Park on 2222 West Avenue, and I decide to build.
Sounds very specific.
And I decide to build a 2,000 square foot barn on my 10,000 square foot lot. After the barn is built, can I come back and then say I would like to make this barn an EDU?
Yes, you can, but better yet, because that's in City of San Diego, they're just going to be like, dude, how many ADUs do you want? Do the ADU bonus program. So the rule with the ADU bonus program is for every one ADU, attached or detached, that you have, it has to be lean 15 years, low to moderate income, which like I said is great income, and then you can have a second ADU with no lien. So that can look like an apartment building, it can look like a little village, however you want to structure it, but they're actually going to proactively push you to do that.
I think you kind of answered my question. So talking about SB9, you have the 2 ADU allotment plus the junior ADU on the original lot. For AB 1033, you can get the ADU plus the bonus ADU with the bonus program, or how many ADUs can you theoretically put with 1033?
As many as, well, City of San Diego allows unlimited ADUs that you can fit on the whole property and go up. And they have exceptions. So like I said, Gary Geiler, the head of permits, was bragging to me about one that they've got 125 units in North Park. It's one of those big high-rise things. So it may look like an apartment building, but it's actually a bunch of ADUs on a single-family zone property, right? So,
So it's like basically like SB 10
yeah,
passed, but
on speed.
called
Yeah.
AB 1033.
Yeah, so, but the AB 1033 is the selling off thing. So in theory, they could then condotize that like they used to condotize apartments and sell off the units, which is great.
What about fourplexes? ADUs and JDUs to fourplexes?
Yes, right now you can add, I believe City of San Diego, well, you do ADU bonus or you can do 2. State law, there's a law going through right now. Some cities limit just 2 ADUs to any type of multifamily. I think they're going toward, once you get past 4, you can have 1 ADU for every 2 units. Yeah, yeah.
So can I build a 2-story ADU on top of a garage?
What city?
Southeast San Diego. So still San Diego.
Yes, probably. Probably. I would check. I would talk to an ADU expert and permit, because keep in mind too, the cities will be like, it's easy for them to say no, right? So, and there's a whole other thing we haven't even talked about called SB 9. All single family homes in the state of California, owner occupied, are allowed to have a second house, not just the ADUs, but a second house. So I walked up to, I'm down in Imperial Beach, and I'm like, hey guys, I want to buy, walked up, met him for the first time, I want to buy this house, I want to add 2 ADUs, I want to add 3 units. And he goes, oh, no, you can't do that. And you can only build a junior ADU and an ADU. And I said, what about SB 9? He said, oh, you know about that. So it's important to work with your experts so that you're armed with the information.
If SB 9, sorry, it's city of San Diego only or?
State.
The whole state, okay.
State. SB 9 allows you on owner occupied to either split the lot or add a second house to any single family zone property. So in theory, an owner occupied house in almost anywhere in the state can have a junior ADU, a detached ADU, and an SB 9 unit, or also a second house, minimum size 800 square feet, no max.
I have a question. So if you have an R2 lot and one of the lots are divided, and I can go up, is that possible to go up in Chula Vista?
Probably not. Like Cabal would probably know. They do not like ADUs. They're dragging their feet. So I would definitely talk to an expert.
So buy a property in San Diego, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so curious, like I recently acquired a home in Spring Valley area. The garage was converted to like a kitchen party room, and we're reconverting it to like a studio, kind of 1-bedroom type. We're not exactly sure what we're gonna do yet. I don't even know if they permitted that conversion in the first place. It would probably be pretty wise to, 1, obviously speak with an expert, but 2, kind of look into the options of doing what you were kind of mentioning of financing. You know, I could get a better product than doing all this work myself.
Oh yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah.
It could definitely make me like
Yeah.
no longer to be a lot better. Get by the books instead of like some unpermitted like DIY project.
Yeah, because as soon as, so right now, right. I mean, right now there's a large part, like 50% of ADUs in the state of California are unpermitted, and that's just a guess, right? So what they're trying to do is do an amnesty to get people to permit their stuff. As soon after a couple years, they're going to start sending out inspectors to basically make sure. But there's other risks with renting. I have a number of clients who had unpermitted ADUs in their backyard. I'll tell you one lady in North LA area. She had a teeny tiny little ADU in her backyard. She had a neighbor who, for a variety of reasons, got divorced, kicked out of her house. She offered 5 years ago, you can live in my junior ADU until you figure it out. And then they decided, well, my daughter's growing up, we want our daughter to move in, so they asked the neighbor to move. The neighbor turned them into the city and then sued them for every penny back rent for having her live in a substandard, unpermitted ADU, and she's still living there, in their backyard, like super awkward. So there's also insurance. If you're lying to insurance, it's not, and if there's a fire or whatever, it's not insurable. There's all kinds of like messes that we're starting to see. So if neighbors turn you in or a renter turns you in, there you do not have, get a permit.
Absolutely.
Do you know what that involves with the one that's already built? I've got a couple. I got one that's probably under 500 square feet.
Yeah.
In San Diego, more like 400 something.
Yeah, you want to look, talk to a professional and see if it's built to workman-like standards. Usually, I've seen ones that you didn't have to lift a hammer and you got it permitted because it was well built. And otherwise, there are some things that maybe you have to upgrade a little bit. But if they're well built, it shouldn't be that bad.
You just have to draw the plans. You have to draw a new set of plans.
Minimum in San Diego is whether they're pretty strict on that.
What's that?
Do you know if the 500 square foot minimum, they're strict on that?
No, you just, as Susan said, you just have to have the plans drawn. And so that they can see, what's built, what's the, Title 24, the energy code, stuff like that, that it's built to current standards. That's the other thing. The problem with leaving unpermitted ADUs is that the permit standards, there's more rules every year. So every year you don't permit it, it's more work you have to be done. Whereas once you get it permitted, you don't have to improve it every year. So.
That ADU complex with 100 units you were talking about in North Park, how would they qualify, and what are some hoops that you would have hopped through to get a property to qualify for something like that?
They worked with a great design build group that is ADU specific. Number one, that's a larger financing project, obviously. So that's a whole other ball of wax, but the city wants that. They, specifically City of San Diego. Other cities are really fighting it. And so where you invest, I can't stress enough, invest in City of San Diego, if there's one place. But there's great other places, like County's pretty good. Oceanside, I would stay away from Carlsbad. No offense, I'd stay away from Chula Vista. Imperial Beach is great. So those, we can kind of guide you that way.
Okay.
So there's nothing I can do in Chula Vista?
I would, sweet as pie, call them or go up to the counter, plate of brownies, be like, and I just say to them, sweet as pie, this is my property, this is what I'd like to build. What, if it was your property, what would you do? Oh, do you think so? Oh, that's brilliant, because if it's their idea, it must be brilliant. But if I need more space, what would you do? Keep going it. And then ask them them to email that to you in writing so you have it in writing. And only go back to that person.
Well, we're going to be hanging out here for another about 25 minutes or so. The pros are going to be here to answer any of your further questions. Emmanuel, if you can stand up. Emmanuel is a general contractor specializing in building ADUs, so if you have build-specific questions, Emmanuel can answer those for you. Paul and Matt, if you guys can stand up. These guys are solar pros. When you build your detached units, you need solar. These are your go-to guys. Yununa, raise your hand. She's an insurance agent. When you build your ADUs, you need to insure them. She can do them for you. And right next to her, Sophia, once you're building your empire, she builds trusts for you, so she can protect your legacy. And on screen here and on some flyers, you'll see that once you build all your Airbnb empire, your ADU empire, now you're going to become an Airbnb entrepreneur. This is the next in our seminar series, so make sure to register for our new How to Become an Airbnb Entrepreneur professional. But our pros are going to be hanging out here. We're going to be here for another 25 minutes. Yes, you had one more question. Go for it.
For the next seminar, you're talking about Airbnbs. Are they going to allow that for the 1033 lots? Because I know SB9 is really...
It's yet to be determined, but
okay.
we'll be answering those questions at that seminar. So register. All right, thank you.